Such a sad, sad day today. I've only just now handed back the Redneck Special, the Ram 1500 Limited. All 400 kilowatts of it. Jaws of life needed to extract me from that vehicle. I was already planning the upgrades, the 6.7 litre Cummins and the twin smokestacks behind the cab, the 37-inch Super Swampers. I love that shit. I never thought I would love that truck that much, but I do, dude. If it could cook and clean, know what I mean? Anywho, what a perfect opportunity to A, breach the motoring journalism code of ethics so flagrantly, as you can see, moving from A to B without burning hydrocarbons, and also to answer a question from you on towing. And this is almost a generic question, except for the specifics. I get this all the time. Towing is so unique in the domain of application, right? And it's not because of anything to do with the machines, it's to do with human nature. It's like the nature of the dude who does the towing really matters. So let's get into this question, and then we'll talk about towing and the approach to it that most people get wrong more generally. Forgive me if I've contacted you the wrong way about this, but I watched your YouTube vid on the Ford Ranger Super Duty and really appreciated your honest approach and obvious expertise. I thought the Super Duty was going to be the answer to my towing weight dreams, but that is the context of my question, really. I just want a solid answer to the below rather than dubious answers, i.e. opinions from Facebook warriors who really don't know what they're talking about. My question: if the manufacturer confirms a van Towball weight of 170 kilos at a TARE of 2600 kilos, could it be considered generally safe to tow the vehicle loaded to its ATM of 3,300 kilos with the Towball weight still at 170 kilos, i.e. the extra weight evenly distributed across the van's axles? I just want to be clear, as I've seen so many people say Towball mass rule of thumb is 10% of aggregate trailer mass, but of course that, 330 kilos, starts eating into our Disco 4 payload big time. My guess is the answer to the question is yes. But as I said, I really appreciated your honest view and use of actual physics that determine towing characteristics. Thanks in advance for your help and keep up the good work. This is a question from a dude named Cam, and I get a lot of questions like this. People reach out to me all the time with variations on this theme. So if we eliminate all of the noise here and just concentrate on the crux of the question, what's he really asking? He's really saying, is it safe to tow using a Disco 4, which is a moderately heavy full-sized SUV? Is it safe to tow a 3.3 ton trailer with 170 kilos on the Towball static download? So that's about 5%, right? It's a little bit over 5%, but only, B's endophallus over 5%. And the answer broadly is no, in my view. No in Australia, maybe okay in Europe, because in Europe they tend to be a little bit more sensible about towing, and they have more sophisticated appreciation for what causes towing mishaps. So let's talk about that just for a minute. The higher the speed, the greater the propensity for instability in the combination. And that means, when you're towing something, the trailer can start yawing like this, and the vehicle can yaw with it like that, or it can become a compound pendulum where the Towball is actually like a horizontal hinge. So there's two modes of harmonic instability with towing and yaw instability, right? And both of them are really terrifying. And if they get out of control, the thing about harmonics, of course, is if they get out of control, there's no bringing them back, right? You've got to catch this kind of thing really early. And the higher the speed, the higher the rate at which the pendulum amplitude increases, right? This means that there's not much warning between driving down the road, it all seems fine, and the next minute the trailer is overtaking you before you end up parked on the roof hopefully there's an afterwards kind of thing. So the factors are travel speed and the disparity in weight between the trailer and the vehicle in front of it. If the vehicle in front of it is comparatively heavy and the trailer is comparatively light, then there's greater inherent stability in the system. If you're only driving slowly, then there's greater stability in the system. If you've got more weight on the towball, then there's greater stability in the system. So in Australia, what we want to do generally is tow really heavy trailers relative to the vehicle at high speed. And that's 2 crosses in the boxes for stability, okay? And that's why in Australia, we often have a 10% guideline recommendation for towball download, because you need the heavier download to give you the stability that you've traded off by wanting to drive so freaking quickly and also tow such a heavy trailer relative to the vehicle in front of it. These are called facts, okay? And in Europe, they can get away with 5% on the towball, and that's why you see vehicles like Tucsons and Sportages with a 2-ton tow limit, but only a 100 kilo limit on the towball download, because that's how they roll in Europe. 5% is okay, because they generally tow lighter trailers more slowly when they are towing them. Here in Australia, we want it all. So I would say that it is generally a bad idea not to have 10% on the towball if you want to tow your 3.3 ton trailer with a vehicle like a full-size SUV, Disco 4-sized kind of vehicle. And the other thing is, I really want to talk about the philosophy of this. The people who tow really interest me, because they expect to be able to absolutely max out the vehicle in just about every respect. They expect to be able to get away with that. So in other walks of life, we don't do this. Like over in my other fat cave, I need to carry heavy stuff. I need to lift heavy stuff off the ground. And by heavy stuff, I mean generally up to about 500 or 600 kilos. So how do I do that? Because I can't really put a crane in there easily, I bought one of those A-frame crane things on wheels, and it's got a working load limit of 1 ton. And I think that's conservatively safe, because I'm picking up something that doesn't generally weigh more than 600 kilos with a thing designed to carry a maximum of 1 ton. And obviously there's a factor of safety in that, but I'm imposing my own margin of safety below that. And it's like if you buy a machine, okay? If you buy a lathe or a milling machine, it's awful to use those machines at the limit of their performance all the time. If you want to take big, heavy, deep cuts in, 4140 or something like that, you don't want to be operating your lathe at the absolute limit of its performance, because the rigidity will suffer. You'll be driving the powertrain, the gearbox, the motor really hard. You'll be on the cusp of chattering like buggery all the time. It's awful to do that. But you know what? When people tow in Australia, they expect to be able to use the machine at the absolute limit of its performance capacity and get away with it. And not only that, for it to be pleasant. So part of Cam's question that I find quite interesting is that he implies that what he wants to do is load the vehicle quite heavily at the same time, because he says that, if he loads up to 330 kilos on the towball, it's really going to eat into his payload. And yeah, it is. But the point is, you shouldn't operate the vehicle at all of its limits contemporaneously. This is like expecting to drive at high speed with a really heavy trailer, like 50% heavier than the vehicle doing the towing broadly, and then you want to load the vehicle heavily as well. And you want that not only to be safe, but presumably you want it to be pleasant, because most people do this recreationally, quote unquote, recreationally. Don't get me started on recreational towing, but in other walks of life, we don't do that, you know. Every time you go into industry, like when I started in industry, they had cranes everywhere and they lifted big heavy things, V16 diesel engines that had big fat roots blowers on them and railway bogies and things of that nature. And every crane has, or at that time had, SWL 10 tons or whatever written on it, like safe working limit. And that already had a factor of safety built into it. But, you know, most of the things that were being lifted were below 10 tons. Incidentally, they changed SWL to WLL while I was working in industry because people thought it was okay to be just a little bit unsafe. Whereas if you've got a working load limit, it's kind of a line in the sand not to be crossed, right? So I'd suggest that buying a vehicle to do towing is kind of like buying any other machine to do any other kind of job, because you should buy the machine that'll do what you need it to do comfortably below the manufacturer's limits, and then doing that is going to be pleasant, okay? It's going to be something you might aspire to do more often rather than just something to be like tolerated. You know, it's no fun operating any machines at the limit of their capacity. Harking back to that little crane I've got in the other fat cave, I have operated it at its capacity once. I was building this massive screw press. I bought this antique screw press. It's all made of cast iron. It weighs about 1.3 tons. The base is about 300 kilos and the top that bolts onto the base is about 1 ton. So my little crane is maxed out at 1 ton. And it was hard work lifting that heavy casting into place on the legs, and you could feel the crane getting up into its elastic range, and it was really difficult. You know, it didn't feel fun to me anyway. It was hard work getting it up there, like physically hard work with the block and tackle. The block and tackle wasn't happy either, like the chain block was not happy with 1,000 kilos. It did it okay, but you know, if I was going to do that all the time, I'd buy a freaking 2-ton crane, and then I'd be, you know, about halfway to the limit at the most, and everyone would be, you know, happier with that, broadly. Just making sure Hilux boy's not going to kill me here. Seem to be safe, living life on the edge. This is what happens when you breach the code of ethics. So I strongly advise you, if you've got the vehicle and you're going to buy a caravan or something else to tow it, buy something that is comfortably below the limit. And then towing it's going to be easy, because it's okay to tow like on the flat, on the smoothest piece of freeway with no crosswind, in perfect conditions. Might be okay to tow near the limit, but one day you're going to be on the worst road with the wrong sorts of bends, you know, off-camber bends, rough surfaces. There's going to be all kinds of inertial inputs that boil down to, you know, just events that want to turn your trailer into a pendulum. And if you're right on the limit also, it's just easier for that to happen, and you really don't want to go there. So what you're really doing when you buy a vehicle or a van and put them together is you really need a combination that's going to be stable in the absolute worst case scenario of operation, not which feels okay like, I don't know, 95% of the time. So I guess what I'm saying is be conservative, and what you're doing is much less likely to end in tears. Please don't tell anyone I've breached the code of ethics this egregiously. I'll catch you next time.